Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. Hope everybody's doing well. And we're playing some more of your favorite deck in Modern, Golgari Midrange. We're playing it in a competitive league in replay form here for you today. Before we get started, let us thank all of our patrons. Thank you all so much. Love you. Couldn't do it without you. And we will specifically be thanking our brand new patron today, Michael Brown. Michael is an Inquisitor. Welcome to the fold, Michael. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And to all of my patrons, we've got a new month coming up shortly. We'll be entering the month of March, so it's time, if you are if you're a Confidant or above, to vote. Let me know what deck you want me to do the scouting report on for this upcoming month. And if you are tireless or above, let me know if there's anything you'd like me to address at length in a Q&A form that we can probably just tack on to the deck tech that we do next month, the updated deck tech. So, yeah, let me know what your thoughts on all that are. And thanks again to all of my patrons, and welcome aboard, Michael. Without further ado, let's play some Magic. So we've won the die roll. Step 1 accomplished, and the hand is slow but powerful, and I'm very happy to be on the play rather than the draw with a hand like this. I'll keep it. Our opponent won't. Our opponent's going down to 6, down to 5. They're going to keep the 5. Alright, duly noted. So, I guess we're not going to have the game log in the replays if we don't start with it open. So I'll remember that for next time, but interesting to always know, of course, what they do with their scry after they take a mulligan, right? Especially if we've got a discard spell. So, from memory, they scry to the bottom. So, let's operate with that in mind. They go Forest, pass. We draw Thoughtseize. Alright, that's a pretty good draw. And we see a no-lander with a whole lot of top end going on here. So, what on earth are we seeing? Well, this is a deck seems to be teamer colored deck called Tooth and Nail. So Tooth and Nail is basically, I am no expert, but as far as I would describe it, I would say it's a ramp deck. It's a big mana deck that has a combo win con. So there are probably a couple different things they can put together. You know, if they get to 7 or indeed 9 mana for the Entwine cost here, put 2 creature cards from the hand onto the battlefield, and they can just outright win that way. They're, of course, just kind of like the Amulet Titan deck, specifically thinking of that because the presence of Hornet Queen, they can just ramp to some big bombs in general. So Tooth and Nail, kind of the namesake card. We've got Xenagos, God of Revels, which does combo with a lot of the other cards in the deck, really, as part of the Tooth and Nail Entwine package. We've got Kiora's Follower, which is a way to ramp. It can just generally be a mana dork for 2 that untaps a land, but of course this deck plays Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, other enchantments like that, so this is usually better than just a regular mana dork. Hornet Queen, which we know is a very big thorn in our side. Very, very powerful value play against a deck like ours. And then they've got some planeswalkers in the mid-costed slots, the 4-drop, the 5-drop types, that both serve as value pieces in their own right and as ways to further ramp. Garrick Wildspeaker is a perfect example of this. So that's generally what you should expect from a deck like Tooth and Nail. And of course, right now they've got all kinds of top end. They've got no ramp, except for this Kiora's Follower. That's just what we take. We'll make our land drop, and we will pass. The opponent, unfortunately, has not hit another land, and we draw Tarmogoyf. That's fine and well, but Liliana of the Veil is the clear play here. It's such a clear play that they're in fact going to go ahead and scoop it right up. So they had no way to come back from that. We're just running them out of resources. If they find... They're going to be too slow even if they find just straight ramp off the top. But even if they do, if it's a creature, we can edict away. If not, we just keep +1ing. The game's just over, even with this Lily. But of course, next turn we've got Tracker into Fetch Land too. So, absolutely free win here, no question about it, after that mull to a pretty unplayable 5 against a deck like ours, right? So, anyway, we'll take it. Seems like a good start to the league to me. Alright, my friends, so how do we sideboard against Temur Tooth and Nail? Well, I am no expert on the deck, but I'm going to show you what I did, and you can let me know what your thoughts are as well. So, starting here from the right, I don't think Grafdigger's Cage and Nile Spellbomb are necessarily where we want to be. Without having seen more of the deck, I don't think that's where we want to be. Grafdigger's Cage is, remember, Tooth and Nail is going to bring something to the hand, and then to play, so Grafdigger's Cage does not shut that part off. They haven't shown me much from the graveyard, so Engineered Explosives, though, is something I am interested in because I'm suspicious for cards like Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, even hitting the 2-drop ramp pieces like Kiora's Follower, maybe some other alternative enchantments they play. That all seems legit, so I think Engineered Explosives is something that we are interested in. Now, they're a big mana deck that really has to ramp, so you might think Fulminator Mage is good, and maybe it is, but my understanding of these lists is that they mostly lean on basic lands. Because effects like Fulminator Mage are perhaps more, even more commonly stuff like Field of Ruin is so common in the meta, they don't want to get blown out getting 2-for-1 or worse by effects like that. So, as far as I am aware, they will generally be playing a whole lot of basic lands, and not so many non-basic lands. So Fulminator Mage is something I actually declined to bring in. Now, maybe if we see more of their deck and we see they do play enough non-basics to make this a good target, this will be fine. But I'm going to sideboard conservatively here until I know more. So I actually said no to Fulminator, even though it's a big mana deck, but we do want the Maelstrom Pulse. This is going to take care of everything from the ramp pieces to the planeswalkers to the top end stuff. Maelstrom Pulse can answer it all. Nissa Vital Force, Kitchen Finks, I mean, these cards are both reasonable, I suppose, but ultimately don't think we needed them. Again, looking for the conservative sideboarding here. So, to that end, I brought in Deathmark. I think Deathmark is clearly fine here. And I also like Collective Brutality. It shows us that we can kill Arbor Elf, Kiora's Follower. We can take Tooth and Nail out of the hand. And then maybe there are other use cases beyond that. But those alone are good enough for me to be interested in this card. I think Liliana the Last Hope, Languish, these cards are potentially fine. But again, I'm going to be on the conservative side here until I see more. And they look like they have so many ways to beat us once they ramp that I don't think Surgical Extraction is correct here. But again, no expert, so guys, please let me know what you would do here. I would love to learn from you. But what I did here, I think we just brought in these 4. We took out the Spellbomb because we're not exactly sure what they're up to, if anything, with the graveyard. From there, remember that we're on the draw here, so we kind of want to keep that one in mind. I think it's correct to leave in all 4 Lilianas of the Veil, and I think one Lily the Last Hope, if we need slots we could cut her, but I think she seems pretty fine. I think I went ahead and cut the Kalitas here, cut away a Scavenging Ooze as well, and that left one slot that I wasn't quite certain about. I think we're supposed to leave in all of our discard effects, so from here you could cut maybe the Last Hope, maybe the Tireless Tracker. Otherwise, I think most of what we've got here is pretty good. I think we're supposed to leave all pushes, all decays, just so we can stop the ramp, basically, at all cost. Trophies, this stuff's great. Pulse is great. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what else we're supposed to cut here. So, I think, for the purposes of this game, I cut the Last Hope. Could be wrong, but I think I remember doing that because I wasn't comfortable going down on a 3rd threat. That could just put us in a position where we don't have a clock. So, not the most scientific sideboarding you'll ever see because I don't have really any experience against Tooth and Nail, but based on what I saw in Game 1, that's what I did. So, let's see how it works out for us. I'll see you for Game 2. Alright, my friends, on the draw here against Teamer Tooth and Nail, and our hand is pretty solid all around. We're lacking a 2-drop play to make our curve perfect, but otherwise we've got a lot of what we want to see. I really like this hand. It's a definite keep, and our opponent's going to keep 7 this time as well. Breeding Pool and pass. Alright, a 4th land is actually a perfectly fine draw here. It makes sure we can go Tracker into fetch land on turn 4. But for now, it's going to be Inquisition. So what are they working with here? Well, it's another land-light hand. It's a 2-lander. But it is a little bit more functional than their last hand. So they have another Kiora's Follower, and they have Overgrowth, which is a enchantment that adds double green whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana. So definitely need to keep that in mind. Then let's look, they have a little bit more of a balanced curve here. It's not all the crazy top-end stuff. They have the Garruk Wildspeaker we saw game 1. They have Kiora, Master of the Depths. She, like Garruk, is both somebody who can +1 to ramp and -2 for value, basically. So good fit in the deck. And Primal Command, this is a card that is just, it's like the Cryptic Command for these green ramp decks, right? So definitely a little bit of a better hand against us, but one that can still kind of be crippled, at least so far, by what we're doing here. So we are going to take away Overgrowth because we've got Fatal Push to deal with Kiora's Follower. They crack the Wooded Foothills, they play the Follower, and we take our turn. We draw Collective Brutality. Well, that's really, really clean. And as much as this makes our potential tracker a little bit worse, I still think it's correct to do this here. We're going to Brutality away the Follower. We definitely should be killing that no matter how we do it, but Brutality the Follower and escalate, pitching our basic land, take away the Primal Command, and that feels great. We see they have an Arbor Elf in hand, and that's fine. We can handle that a couple different ways, so I think that was a pretty good draw there for us, Collective Brutality. They find a land and they play the Arbor Elf. So they've got 2 cards in hand, 2 Planeswalkers. Alright, Dark Confidant. So here, interesting spot. We have 2 clear options. We should not let them untap with that Arbor Elf. So we either go push the Elf, play the Bob, or we play Lily and we Edict away. So both pretty viable in my opinion, but I chose push into Bob. It's a little bit more proactive, and we don't necessarily want to go on the Lily plan until we have to. So if we had Edicted away with Lily last turn, that's fine, but then we're obligated to tick her up this turn, right? And we don't necessarily want to lose any of that other stuff from our hand that we just used this turn, or the tracker. So let's see what they have. They have a tireless tracker of their own, but of course no land to follow it up, 2 Planeswalkers stuck in hand. So we are pretty rewarded for our line. And Bob is going to flip a Death Mark. We also find Assassin's Trophy. Those are some fine cards, but now it's Liliana time. Now we Edict away the tracker. That's definitely the play here. And get in for 2 with the Bob. They rip a land. Okay, pretty good for them. This was kind of funny. Our opponent tapped and untapped a million times, couldn't make up their mind. In the end, they just decided to go Kiora and untap. So I don't think this is really the correct play, but I see why they did it. They want to basically not be in range of... they don't want to tick down. Whichever Planeswalker they play, they're suspicious that, if it's the Garruk, we'll have removal for the Beast. They don't want to put themselves in a position where their Planeswalker can just die to a Bob attack. So I understand why they did that, but getting no value at all out of the Planeswalker, and letting us untap, that's a little bit loose as well, potentially. So anyway, Dark Confidant, trigger shows us an Inquisition. Not very exciting, but that's okay, because we can just use that as a free pitch. We'll take the Lily up, there goes their Garruk. They are totally empty-handed. So, because they're totally empty-handed, we're very happy to spend this Maelstrom Pulse we just found in our draw step on that Kiora. Crack in for 2. Opponent's in total top deck mode, and it's an Arbor Elf. It's an Arbor Elf, not the most exciting. We draw a tracker for our draw step and Blooming Marsh off of Bob, so that's pretty perfect. In fact, that is strong enough that I'm just going to Edict away that Arbor Elf with Liliana. That lets us have a super mana efficient turn. We pull so far ahead in every way, and we still have some really good answer cards in hand, so I'm not sad to lose the Lily there, and they just scoop it up, presumably having drawn either another mana dork or something from the top end they could not play. So yeah, despite me not knowing necessarily the precision sideboarding for this matchup, we seem to be pretty well positioned against it. Now, they, granted, didn't really go off either game, but we interact at every stage along the curve pretty well, and we have these kind of glue cards that do whatever we need them to do at any given time, like Liliana of the Veil, who are frankly going to be pretty tough for them to beat a lot of the time if we find her on curve. So definitely feels good to start off with a very, very comprehensive victory, very comprehensive 2-0 here in this competitive league. So off to a great start, and we'll see you for round 2. All right, my friends, we've got a 4-lander with a pretty mediocre power level, like Treetop Village turn 1 into a bunch of 2-drops. Sounds fine, but, Skoos and Trophy, they have a little less raw power when played on curve than, Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant and, maybe Abrupt Decay, for instance, as alternatives. However, this hand is certainly keeping a blind game 1. We just realized that it might be a little bit higher variance in terms of how it lines up than some other more classic BGX curves. But our opponent's going to take a mull, so that's a good start for us. They go down to 6. Okay, Treetop and pass to you. Opponent goes Swamp, Ether Vial. So that makes me go WTF a little bit. Swamp into Ether Vial, I don't know what that is. Humans don't play a Swamp. Merfolk obviously doesn't play Swamp. I'm wondering, is this like Slivers? Because I know Slivers want a lot of the Swamp, a lot of Swamps in their deck as much as they can afford, because of the card Sedge Sliver. But even Slivers are probably more likely to run like basic Forest. They're a 5-color deck. I don't know if they're running basic Swamp. They probably just run a lot of Swamp duels, right? So am I thinking like allies? I really don't know. But whatever it is, it's an Ether Vial deck. It's a creature deck. Kalida's Trader of Get's probably a pretty good draw. But either way, we're just going to fetch a basic, conscious of our life total, basic Swamp, Scavenging Ooze, pass to you. See what they're up to. Counter goes on Vial, and they name Spirit off of Cavern of Souls. Okay, so this is clearly some kind of a black Spirits deck that plays Collective Brutality main deck. They just kill our Skoos. Well, that's rude, and that's definitely about the last thing I expected out of an Ether Vial deck is Collective Brutality, but okay, fair enough. So, we draw Tireless Tracker for turn, and I chose to shock in and play the Tracker. So this is a Spirits deck, this is a Tribal deck, it's an Ether Vial deck. I really cannot imagine that they have another main deck removal spell, that they're likely to have one in their hand now after having Brutality to our Ooze. So between that and the fact that even if the Tracker does get killed, we do have another threat with Kalidas. I chose to play that, didn't really feel we had a better play. I think we have to save Brutality and Trophy for killing things. Our opponent is stuck on 2 land and they'll pass. Alright, Vial's up to 2 as well. So we know that Spell Queller is not live this turn. So we play our Verdant Catacombs, we make a clue, we get in. No blockers, so fine. Second main we're going to fetch, make another clue, and it's time to just slam this Kalidas while we can. Kalidas gets in under the potential Spell Queller, so good for us. End step, they will Vial in a Selfless Spirit. Alright, you got it. Vial goes up to 3, and they have a Godless Shrine. So right now I'm not even sure if they play blue, because they've just showed me a couple of black lands, but still have to be suspicious of all the usual Spirits tricks. And now they're representing 2 3-drops. Alright, we draw Liliana the Last Hope. Pretty good draw. If that Blooming Marsh was an untapped land that we just laid out, I might just try to main phase her and see what happens, because if she resolves, she is incredible against their board. If not, well, we get to take it from there, right? But Blooming Marsh does not give us that luxury, so we just make our clue and we turn our big beater sideways, and they've got nothing. They've got nothing, so I'm pretty happy to just connect for 6 and gain 3 life. So here I'm going to try to force a little bit of action to Collective Brutality the Spirit. So basically the only way I get punished for this is if they have like double Spell Queller style effects. And I'm suspicious for those things, but at the same time, I'm also a little bit scared about them having double access to 2/3 drops right now, because I'm a little bit scared of them just overloading with Drog Skull Captains and other 3 drops here on the end step. So I kind of wanted to force some action here. Don't know if it was correct, but this Collective Brutality being sorcery speed, I felt like I would be kind of going shields down if I just passed. So who knows? They do have the Drog Skull Captain here. But we get the Assassin's Trophy here on the Captain, and indeed, they have the Rattle Chains, excuse me. So, Rattle Chains, pretty huge blowout here. So maybe I was incorrect here to try to force the action. Maybe I was far enough ahead on board that I should have just passed. But here's the thing. I'm really far ahead on resources, so I don't really mind getting blown out that much if the upsides were there. And the upsides were for sure there. Taking care of their board, getting zombies, all of the above. The upsides were huge there. They were absolutely huge. So, little bit of a questionable decision point there. You know, I guess I could have just contented myself with passing and holding up clues. But I decided to go for it. So, they've got the clock coming in for 5, holding it back the Rattle Chains. Still 3 land, still Vial on 3 cards in hand. Inquisition of Kozilek, pretty good draw here. Pretty good draw. They've got a Vial activation in response for Spell Queller, so they've got all the reactive cards here. Pretty solid for them. So here I'm looking for, I think it was better to crack a clue than to play the Lily of the Last Hope, so here's why. If I crack the clue, I can actually attack with both of my creatures relatively safely. I also can potentially find a land to keep the clue train rolling. And if I find a land, I can play the Lily. If not, I might find other action. So I think cracking the clue there is correct. Field of Ruin. Sure. So here, just decided to attack first before we do anything else. We might be able to finish off something with Liliana the Last Hope, depending on how they block. I guess not with all that hexproof, right? But anyway, sure, they take the double block on Kalidas. This is fine with me. We gain 3 life. We trade 1 for 1. We make a zombie. It's all fine. It's all fine to me. Liliana the Last Hope is the play. Just ticking up on the Drog Skull Captain. But they've got some more reactive stuff here. Looks like. They've got yet another Rattle Chain, so they get to kind of counter our trigger. And, yeah, they're just playing everything at instant speed through this Vial and through the Rattle Chain's natural flash, plus the flash it grants to other things. So, this is definitely a great last card for them to have in hand. So they play a land, they play a Curious Obsession. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. And you have to sack it if you didn't attack with a creature by your end step. So definitely was still feeling okay until they played that Curious Obsession. That lets them potentially rebuild. So they're coming across at us. They're going to use the Selfless to put us down, to put Liliana down to 1, and they're going to hit us for 4. Kind of interesting there, but note that Curious Obsession specifies when it deals damage to a player. So they had to come at us with this Rattle Chains if they wanted the draw. And I guess they didn't feel able to attack with more than one other creature, so I understand that attack. Even though it looks a little weird on the surface, I understand that attack. They get to draw, and they pass. Alright, Maelstrom Pulse is a heck of a draw. and it's definitely something we should play here. We are only punished if they ripped yet another Rattle Chains or Spell Queller, and they're activating the Vial. They rip the Queller. Well, yeah, we're pretty much max punished at this point. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. We're going to turn our tracker sideways. Attacking with a zombie doesn't accomplish anything, but we'll turn the tracker sideways, and they take yet another multi-block. This is going to be a triple block here. So we're going to crack a clue in hopes of finding exactly Fatal Push for that Drogskall Captain, and we don't. We don't. So they get to sack the Selfless Spirit. Pretty sweet play there. And we'll just take our Lily up. We've got a Lily of the Veil in hand, but they have successfully blunted our interaction very well, assembled a very resilient board with some recursive card draw and all that good stuff. They take care of our Last Hope, they do a few damage to us, and they found a Drogskall Captain, so they're just ripping all of the best stuff. We're pretty well locked under the Drogskall here, so Liliana Edict is fine, but Tireless Tracker, not a very good draw. They give us back our Maelstrom Pulse off of that Spell Queller, so I can take care of the Curious Obsession because the rest of the board is hexproof. I think it's better to do that than to take care of the Vial, but it's very, we've deterministically lost here anyway. We attack with a zombie to send a message, they block, we scoop. Feels bad, man, feels bad. So we got wrecked by Esper Spirits. That turn 1 collective brutality, or turn 2 collective brutality was highly unexpected. Pretty big setback, to be honest, because it let them take care of our Skoos, which would have been eventually good at punching damage through and stabilizing our life total, and let them develop at a slower pace. But however, where the game was actually lost was the turn where we went for the collective brutality on the Selfless Spirit, and in retrospect, it seems clear that the better play would have been to just pass, holding up clues, holding up Assassin's Trophy, but you know what? I also think there is at least some merit to making them have it. I would have been totally fine with them blowing me out even once. If they only had one thing to vial in and to blow us out, or to flash in and blow us out, I think we were far enough ahead in terms of our clock that that would have been just fine, and we had enough clues where if the game got grindy, we are not falling behind on resources. But as it happens, they not only had 2 reactive plays to basically counter both of our spells, but they also were able to put together some really good stuff off the top, including a Curious Obsession as their last card that found them a Spell Queller, which really stopped us from getting back to parity. So, yeah, I think we kind of got maxed punished, but maybe it was our own fault for getting a little aggressive on that turn with our removal spells. Regardless, we lost to Spirits. Let's go to the sideboard, see what we can do. Alright, my friends, here we are sideboarding against Esper variant of Spirits, and I'm gonna basically be interested in most of the same cards that I'm interested in against Bant Spirits. So that would be Deathmark, EE, Brutality, Pulse, Lily the Last Hope, Languish. The big exception here is that I don't think I'm interested in Grafdigger's Cage. Of course, Grafdigger's Cage comes in to take care of Collected Company against Bant. But here, obviously, we're not worried about Coco. But are we worried about Lingering Souls? I don't actually know. Seems like a potential reason to be in black for a Spirits tribal deck. Lingering Souls is, of course, a little bit awkward alongside Aether Vial in terms of it's like a kind of a bunch of creatures. It's an army in a can, but it's one that can't come through the vial. However, making all of those spirits really good value play in general, obviously really nice with the anthems. So, who knows? But I chose not to bring in the Grafdigger's Cage until we saw that they are for sure on Lingering Souls. But otherwise, I don't really know what else to expect. Obviously, they've got collective brutalities. They might be on, I would expect them to be on like Thoughtseize against combo decks, maybe some more removal for creature matchups, maybe Lingering Souls. Otherwise, I don't really know. Don't really know why they'd be on black. But these 6 cards are what we want until we know more. So, in terms of what came out, well, I still think we side out the Thought Seizes here, because our life total does get pressured so well, and I still think we side out Nile Spellbomb just like we would against regular old Bant Spirits. Again, we don't know they're on Lingering Souls yet, right? So on the play, I'm going to go ahead and take out just one Liliana of the Veil and take out one Tireless Tracker. We're going to keep everything else in. And on the draw against a deck like this, just like against Bant Spirits, maybe we are interested in hedging, going down a Lily and or a Bob, bring back the Tracker. I like doing something like that on the draw. Maybe even bringing back another Thoughtseize, but that's probably more for Bant. I probably wouldn't do that here against the Esper Vial deck. But regardless, for the max you're about to see, my 60 looked like that. So let's head over and see how we did. Game 2 against Esper Spirits, my friends, and our hand has got a lot to like, but it's a one-lander on the play. We've got to throw those back. We've got to throw those back. Feels bad to mulligan in this unfavorable matchup, but we've got to do it. And this one is, this hand's got a classic curve with double Hissing Quagmire, so it is a keep. The lands are awkward. Well, Marsh Flat's on top. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So we're going to leave that there. Quagmire, pass to you. Opponent goes Watery Grave, tapped, and pass. Alright, so I chose to prioritize Liliana on curve over Dark Confidant on curve. So you could certainly go either way, but the number one reason I did that is because Liliana of the Veil is great, and is not, Bob has the potential at least to be a liability. Number two, we saw that they play Collective Brutality main deck. They've got even more removal post-side if they've got some in their side. So Bob could be vulnerable to that. Number three, if they didn't play an Ether Vial on turn 1, so if they kept a 7 and they didn't have a turn 1 Vial or a turn 1 creature, they've probably got a turn 2 creature. So it's going to give us the option to Fatal Push here on the end step. So those are all the reasons why I chose to run out Hissing Quagmire there. And it's a Rest in Peace. It's a turn 2 Rest in Peace. Well, alright, you got it. Not something we care about quite yet, but it could prove to change in the future. But for now, it is certainly Liliana time. Throwing down the Lily on the empty board. And here, borderline decision, but I definitely think it's definitely at least reasonable to keep that Fatal Push and that Assassin's Trophy, and of course that Dark Confidant in hand. We get a removal spell out of their hand. There goes Path to Exile, so I'm pretty happy with that. Tarmogoyf is our draw. That's a pretty free pitch right now with a Rest in Peace around, so let's do that. Before we do anything else, we'll tick up. And there's another path out of their hand, so our line has been rewarded immensely. Now we get to try for the Bob. And if they've got a Fatal Push, or if they've got the Queller, they've got the Queller. I think we're supposed to make them have it here. But they do have the Queller, so fair enough. We can't quite push that yet, but that's alright. They're not able to get the Lily off the field this turn, almost certainly. And maybe this will force them to extend into our removal a little bit. Well, Drog Skull Captain, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Because that's hexproof, and we would really like for them to have played like Supreme Phantom instead, where we could Fatal Push it this turn. So that was pretty much the best card they could have there as far as I can tell. And Lily goes down to 2. Well, that's not the best for us that she's down to 2. However, we can put together a pretty decent turn from this anyway. So we Edict the Lily. We lose her. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. However, they lose a Drog Skull Captain, and perhaps more, just as importantly, we get Revolt. So Fatal Push, Revolt is turned on, we push the Queller, we get our Bob back, and we've got another Bob for turn. So double Bob, a bit sketchy sometime in some ways here in this situation, but the opponent just draws their card for turn and passes. So let's hope our Bobs just bury them in value without hitting us too hard on the old life total. So Bob is showing Verdant Catacombs and Tireless Tracker. So bit of a mixed bag to start there from old Bobby, but Let's attack first. We're bluffing removal here, or indeed actually holding up removal in the form of trophy. Opponent's got nothing. Okay, so here, again, we might be walking into the Spell Queller, but I think we're supposed to definitely just be proactive here if we can. Yep, they've got the Queller. Sure, that doesn't break my heart. Doesn't break my heart. We want to develop our mana here. We're going to have double spell turns coming up with Bob from here on out, basically. So we'll play that land for sure, even though we're going to try to get the tracker back at some point. They had us for 2, and they passed still just on 3 mana. So Bob is going to show us Swamp and Treetop Village. So good job, Bob. Just got all painless value from the good old Dark Confidant. Once again, we're going to turn them both sideways. Cool, they get through. So here we're looking for that aforementioned double spell turn. We're going to lead on the Skoos. If they've got yet another Queller, we can deal with it. Okay. They let the Skoos resolve. We play our Treetop Village, and we just pass. Opponent's got to play on the end step. On the end step, they're flashing in a Spell Queller just as a 2/3 flash flyer. Well, that is totally fine, and we're going to let it resolve. Then we're going to go ahead and trophy their other Queller, get our Tireless Tracker back. So we've got a nice wide board now. They've just got a 2/3. And we are ahead on the life total as well. We're ahead on lands. We're going to be ahead on cards once we take our Bob draws. So looking pretty okay for us, but at the same time it's a little bit awkward because they can get beefier than us. Our Skoos can't grow with the rest in peace. Our Bobs are 2/1s. Our tracker needs mana sunk into it, so this could kind of go either way, but the fact that they didn't have the luxury to turn that Queller sideways is pretty good news for us. Our Bobs show us a Blooming Marsh and a Lily of the Veil, so again, a mixed bag as far as the life total goes, but Lily is a pretty good draw here. Nothing they can really have that blows us out that I know of unless they're playing like Negate or something with only 2 mana open. So we'll lead on the Lily. We will Edict. Opponent's going to flash in a Rattle Chains. Sure, that doesn't stop Lily's Edict, but it does give them another option in terms of what to sacrifice. And it will be the Rattle Chains. So Rattle Chains goes down. And here, I chose to crack the clue with the Tireless Tracker here because, number 1, it digs us to more action. Number 2, it lets the tracker attack into that 3/4 Spell Queller. I don't mind a trade here at all. So, didn't really find anything exciting. It's just yet another land. But, tracker it is. Coming across, getting in for 4. So, things are a little bit sketchy here. We're down to 10. They've got 4 power on board. We've got double Bobs potentially becoming a liability. And they play a Jace the Mind Sculptor. So there is all kinds of spice going on across the table from us, and they're going to unsummon our tracker. Okay, that's actually a pretty good play. So here we are crossing our fingers that Bob doesn't hurt us too bad. And these Bobs have been okay for us. We take 2 from Tarmogoyf, but we also flip a Swamp, and Deathmark is our draw for turn. So all of that is pretty okay for us. The Tarmogoyf doesn't really do anything, but whatever. Deathmark in relatively painless Bobs, good enough for me. So we'll begin by taking Lily up, pitching one of our many extraneous lands, Blooming Marsh in this case, and they have to pitch a Drogskull Captain, so I will take that all day. This is not a turn where we can fire up the Treetop Village, or we should fire up the Treetop Village quite yet, in my opinion. Our attacks are just not as profitable as they could be. I think it's better to redeploy a tracker, because we can also play a Swamp, make a Clue, Deathmark the Queller, and then still actually fire up the Treetop Village. And now with that sequencing, that's actually probably our best bet. We could play another tracker, we could crack clues, whatever, but here I think it is actually a time to just race, and they just scoop it up. Now they were not actually dead there, because they can... Well, actually, were they dead? Let's add it up. And yep, okay. So these are the types of things that you don't take the time to do when you're just trying to commentate a replay at a decent clip, but now that I'm looking at it, it is indeed lethal. Unless they just block the treetop village, let everything else through, and go to 1. Which is also pretty much guaranteeing them to die. Let's assume they don't have, like, any kind of wrath effect in here. And I guess their only hope would be that I flip double 4-drops off of Bob, so I guess they could, in theory, have played it out for one more turn, but yeah, that leaves them pretty much cold. So, pretty interesting how this all works out against these Spirits decks, right? Because in Game 1, looked like we were in a really commanding position, and they just kind of turned the corner, blew us out a couple times in a row, and then we could not quite ever recover when they tempoed us out of the game. Here, things looked a little bit sketchier in many ways, both with regard to how our stuff was lining up, with regard to what was in our hand before we stuck these Confidants, and then in regard to potentially, how double Confidant will play out against a deck like this. But as it turns out, the game that looked a little bit more grim in Game 1, or a little bit more favorable, in Game 1 went our way, and the one that looked a little bit more grim in a few different places here, this one ended in our favor. So, just goes to show you how variance can come into play on both sides of the table, and also the difference that Ether Vial makes. They didn't have Ether Vial here, so their tempo game was not as strong, and we were able to leverage our raw card advantage to bury them. So we clawed back a game against this spicy Jace the Mind Sculptor-led Esper Spirits deck, but the series is not over, so let's see what happens in Game 3. And here we are for Game 3 against Esper Spirits. Our opponent's keeping 7, as will we. Turn 1 Inquisition is very, very nice in a matchup like this. Turn 2 Tarmogoyf is pretty good. From there, we're going to need a little bit more help from our top deck, but at least we have some interaction in the form of Trophy. And they go Island Ether Vial, so I was not certain if the Vials would still be in post-side, but apparently they are. We draw an Overgrown Tomb. Pretty bad. We want the density of spells from here on out. And we're going to Inquisition. We see Godless Shrine, so they have access to all 3 colors. And they have a really nice hand. They have a Fatal Push, double Rattle Chains, and a Selfless Spirit. Well, really nice hand for sure. And open question as to what we take here. I think the Selfless Spirit is not something we care that much about at the moment, so probably it's either Rattle Chains or Fatal Push. Rattle Chains is a big, big pain in our side, but I went ahead and chose to take the push. Really hoping that this Tarmogoyf can just go a very long way for me. It's already pretty powerful at 3-4, and we draw a Languish. Okay, well that is a good draw. So, let's see what the opponent's got. They're going to flash in a Rattle Chains just to start developing their board. And then our Tarmogoyf resolves, and it is back over to them. So, opponent will play Supreme Phantom. Alright, that's pretty good. The one thing they didn't really have was a Lord, and now they do. So they're passing with a Vial on 2. And we draw another Tarmogoyf. That is not a very good draw. Because right now, we're basically looking at hopefully forcing them to overextend into the Languish. And is like one of the main reasons we play Languish in this deck is because our Tarmogoyfs are probably more often than not going to live through it, but actually as things stand, they won't. There is no creature in the yard, so of the 4 common types, we only have 3. So we're going to see if we can maybe get another creature into the yard somehow between now and when we Languish. But either way, I don't think playing out the Tarmogoyf accomplishes much, because it either makes our Languish worse if we kill both of our own Tarmogoyfs, or stops us from being able to fire off this trophy to try to get something in the yard. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they do here. But opponent's going to come across for 4. So I don't think it's worth trophying there quite yet. But the fact that they're choosing to do nothing on the and then just move to their end step. They haven't hit a third land drop, so there's no spell queller. So here, I'm going to go ahead and try to trophy the Phantom. If they just let it happen, okay, then maybe we can start developing our board, holding off on the Languish a little bit. But what I'm hoping it does is force them to extend a little bit more into the Languish and or allow my Tarmogoyf to survive the Languish. So, looks like it's going to be the former. They get to counter our trophy with the Rattle Chains. Totally fine with me. That just means it's Languish time, and it's a 3 for 2 if it resolves, which it does. So, not the best Languish I've ever had. And they have a third Rattle Chains. We knew about that second one, but here's a third one on the end step. So, not the best Languish you'll ever see, but an acceptably high ceiling, an acceptably high floor on the card in that situation. So, we'll take it. They go up to 3 on the Vial. Selfless Spirit still in hand along with 2 unknowns. We get hit by 2 for Rattle Chains, and then it is over to us. And we just can't draw any action. So we play out the Tarmogoyf, we play out the Treetop Village, and we have 2 fetch lands in hand. So, despite the fact that we just successfully resolved a Languish against a Spirits deck, they appear to be ahead of us as far as gas in hand goes, but at least they're still only hitting us for 2 this turn. And we draw yet another land. Very, very poor. But, so, with that as our draw, I think there's no choice but to just fire up the Treetop Village, try to race them. This could be bad if they had like a Spell Queller to flash in and then a Drogskull Captain to Violin. They could take a 3, they could block that Treetop with a 3/4 Queller, but I don't think we have a choice here but to do it and make them have something. They don't have that. So, alright, we get to get in, I guess, and here we're going to play the Field of Ruin because it's going to give us at least something to do that might be useful, and we don't even necessarily want to take 1 from a fetch land activation here, so Field of Ruin and pass. They don't have anything to Violin on the end step. Very interesting. No flash action, no Vial. And yet they're still attacking with the Rattle Chains, so they're just going to pass yet again. Not even going to hard cast that Selfless Spirit. So, end step, we will Field of Ruin just to kind of thin out our deck and maybe take them off of black mana, although we do know they play a basic Swamp, but so they're going to float, and then they're going to push our Goyf. Alright, so that's 1 card they had in hand. Interesting. We draw a Scooze. Okay, Scooze is a pretty good draw, but we don't know whether or not they have a Spell Queller. We pretty much know they don't have, like, Drogskull Captain and Spell Queller, because, again, they would have blocked our Treetop Village last turn if they had that. So, really tough call, but I think, again, we just kind of play it, cross our fingers, hope it resolves, and indeed it does. So, that's pretty awesome. We're going to go ahead and fetch a basic Forest. Now, here, might be tempting to say, let's just hold up our Scooze activations and pass. But because we have nothing else to do in hand, we actually only really, leaning on the Scooze there doesn't necessarily get it done. Because if they have Path to Exile, which we saw 2 copies of in Game 1, if they have another Fatal Push, if they have Reflector Mage, so on and so forth, we've been successfully connecting with our Treetop Village up until now. So I think it's better to kind of not put all of our eggs in one basket here. So we're going to try to get in with the Treetop Village. No reason to believe that it won't succeed here, just like it did last turn. And it does get in, so that's great. Now we get to hold up 2 Ooze activations. We're still kind of bluffing, Decay, Trophy, Push, all the good stuff. So here comes the Selfless Spirit on the end step. Cast with Flash due to the ability of Rattle Chains. Fair enough. Viola's on 3, and they just scoop. They just don't have much else to speak of in hand, apparently. So, definitely seems like they were a little bit flooded. Oh, sorry. I'm just a little bit behind the 8 ball today. I'm a little slow-witted today. I don't know what it is. That's right. I'm remembering now. Our opponent showed us their hand. It was triple Ether Vial still in hand. So they left in all of their Ether Vials, and they drew them all. 1 Ether Vial was pretty good here against us. Their 1 Ether Vial in Game 1 was great. But this is the risk of leaving an Ether Vial against a grindy deck, is that when you start getting all the way up to turn 8 like we were here, and where both players are kind of in top deck mode, well, those are some pretty poor draws. So we got a little bit lucky that our opponent just got flooded out on Ether Vial, but hey, you know what? It was their choice to leave them in. You'll recall from my scouting report on Bant Spirits, but it certainly applies to most Ether Vial decks, that almost universally it's recommended that the Vials come out against green-black X decks. Now, you will see there are some arguments specifically against us, specifically against Golgari. We might play a little bit more at sorcery speed than, for example, Jund, and we don't have Kolagin's command either. So it might be a little bit more justified to leave the Vials in against us. And you can expect people to sometimes do it like we saw here, but you can see how it's very, very punishing to draw even 1 Ether Vial when you're in top deck mode, and our opponent drew 3. So hey, I'm not gonna be mad about that one. Like I said, the Vial beat us Game 1. It was their choice to leave in the Vial, and we successfully stayed in the game long enough to make their top decks bad. Plus, we were flooding like absolute crazy ourselves. We were flooding on stuff that's frankly a little bit less useful than Ether Vial, just fetch lands, at least until our Skoos made us able to put them to some use. But regardless, we got there. Feels good. We take down an unusual Spirits deck, but a Spirits deck nonetheless, and we advance to 2-0 in the league. See you for round 3. Alright, my friends, here we are. Competitive League round 3. So far, so good for us, and our opponent's on the play. They will keep 7. Our hand is a little bit sketchy for the obvious reason that we need to hit a 3rd land very badly, and we need it to produce both colors if we want to play out our hand optimally. However, we are on the draw, so we have a pretty good shot at doing that, and the hand is, it's also a little bit clunky even if we do that, right? We're going to be slow, we lack early interaction. I still think it's a keep in a blind game 1, but hand definitely leaves a little bit to be desired here. And we are against Burn. Rakdos Burn, to be exact. Black Cleave Cliffs into Goblin Guide. Revealing an Inquisition, so Goblin Guide was not kind enough to find us the land that we desperately need. However, Inquisition is a really nice draw, and we see, well, it's not just Rakdos, it's got white as well, Mardu Burn. So we are seeing people splashing all kinds of spicy colors into established Tier 1 decks. First it was Esper Spirits, now it's Mardu Burn. We've seen Rakdos Burn rise in the wake of Guilds of Ravnica, and we've seen Boros Burn continue to probably be top dog, but combining them both for Mardu Burn, well, that's pretty spicy. So here we go. We see a hand chock full of everything, but it's only got 1 land. Normally, I'm a big fan of taking away Eidolon of the Great Revel. It's a very tough card for us to beat with a lot of progressions, especially on the play. It grows the Tarmogoyf, all that's very true. However, here, so we're clunky, we are at the mercy of our top deck, and we are on the draw against a very good burn progression. So I think, in a normal matchup where things seem like they're pretty even to start with, you take the Eidolon. Here, I think we need to play for the higher upsides because we're already behind. So with that in mind, I chose to take another... I chose to take probably their best 1 mana play, which is Monastery Swiftspear, and hope they don't hit a 2nd land right away. So that was my thinking there, and let's see how it pans out. Opponent hits us with the Goblin Guide, revealing Abrupt Decay. Good card, potentially, but not really castable at the moment. Opponent's going to use their Spectacle while they can, and indeed they're still on 1 land. So far our plan is working about as well as it can, considering all of the bad things that are happening right now. But Dark Confidant is actually our play. The opponent cannot attack into the Confidant without just giving us a free trade and potentially a little bit of value off of Goblin Guide. So they cast a Bump in the Night, and then they just actually pass. So this is super interesting. The opponent lets us untap with a Dark Confidant, obviously hoping that its trigger is going to absolutely wreck us. But you know what? Even if we take 2 per turn from the Confidant, that's 2 less than we were taking from the Goblin Guide. Now, our opponent doesn't know that we don't have removal in hand, so there's that. But really, this is working out pretty well for us. So Dark Confidant reveals double Blooming Marsh. Well, that's just about as perfect as it gets. So let's go ahead and run out our Liliana of the Veil. I think that's the clear play, but what is perhaps a little bit unclear is whether we tick up or tick down. Both are fairly viable in my opinion, to be honest, but I went ahead and chose to tick up. We're pitching the Tireless Tracker, and this way we're just guaranteed to get a piece of burn out of their hand, and we get to just wall off the Goblin Guide yet again. Are they eventually going to decide, well, we have to just attack and get this Confidant off the field? Or are they just going to keep hoping our triggers do us in? I don't know, but this is a really unusual situation, and it's pretty cool if you ask me, pretty interesting. Eidolon is what left their hand, and they're going to play out another Goblin Guide, and they're not attacking. So we are successfully kind of sort of stonewalling the burn deck with Dark Confidant of all things. But Dark Confidant's flipping the Skoos, so yeah, as good as Skoos is, the taking any pain from these Bob triggers is pretty bad here. It's pretty bad. However, I am even more of a madman than I already was by leaning on a Dark Confidant. I'm shocking in a land there. I'm shocking in a land because it is all about Kalidas, baby. It's Kalidas time. And I think the value here of edicting something away, making a zombie, and then getting in with our Dark Confidant, trying to end the game, I think this is what we need to do. Kalidas is going to win us this game if we get to untap. The big risk here is that they find a white land, they play Boros Charm, and then we die to our own Dark Confidant trigger. But with how this game is playing out, again, we have to go for the biggest upsides here. I think playing it a little bit safer last turn with like a Blooming Marsh into, a Tarmogoyf or something, I don't know. I think Kalidas was better, even though we had to shock in for him. So the opponent did not hit a land. That's awesome. We could still be in trouble if they have like Lightning Bolt and our Confidant hits us for 3, but for now they just have to pass. Confidant reveals a Forest, so that is just perfect here. Absolutely perfect. So what we get to do here is go ahead, clear that Goblin Guide out of the way, make yet another zombie, and then turn everything sideways. We also get to, before damage, just casually gobble up a zombie, make Kalidas a 5/6, and lifelink for 5 while attacking for 9 total. That was a pretty gigantic life swing, and it's not one they're going to be able to come back from, especially when we get to follow it up with a Tarmogoyf. You could have played Skoos there, would have been arguably better. Really doesn't matter. The game's just over, and the opponent will take their draw step and Lightning Bolt us. Alright, then they scoop it up. Sure. So, what an unusual game against Burn. We stabilized behind a Dark Confidant, and we aggressively chose lines that, involved shocking in a land, involved keeping our Bob around. Like, we could have just kept ticking the Lily up and kept the Bob back, but at one point we were like, no, we're going to edict your Goblin Guide and attack with the Bob. Gotta clock you. So, definitely, I truly love playing against Burn. Number one, because it is a favorable matchup, but number two, the games are so genuinely interesting. They play out so differently all the time. All the time they play out differently. Big fan of this. matchup right now, and of course it's one that we see everywhere at the moment, so that's one of the reasons it's a good time to be playing Golgari, but it is still burn, it is still everywhere for a good reason. It's a strong police deck, it can punish you hard if you stumble. So let's take a quick look at the sideboard and then move on to game 2. Alright, my friends, against burn, I mean, you've all seen me do this plenty of times by now. If not, you haven't been watching my channel enough, so maybe you should get on that. But for those who don't know, life gain is good against burn. Life gain is really good against burn. So Kitchen Finks, Collective Brutality are our best cards. Fulminator Mage is a runner-up, definitely a solid card in the matchup. And then we just bring in a couple more pieces of removal that are not necessarily the greatest, but they certainly are better than some stuff that's actively bad. So those 7 cards come in. And as much as Bob put in a really impressive showing last game, we still lose the Bobs, we still lose the Thoughtseizes. And my personal twist on this new burn meta is if it's a Rakdos deck, I leave in my Nile Spellbomb, because Nile Spellbomb can clear out the Bump in the Nights, which can be flashbacked in really long games. If it's a Boros deck, I lose my Spellbomb and I keep Lily the Last Hope. So we saw both. It's a Mardu deck. What do? I guess we saw Bump of the Night. We're going to leave in Nile Spellbomb. It's really, both of these cards are pretty bad. Whatever you leave in Spellbomb or Last Hope, neither one is great. One of the best things Last Hope can do is tick up to kill a Grim Lavamancer. So if you see Grim Lavamancer and you're otherwise not sure, you can leave in that Last Hope. But if they're squeezing in the white cards and the black cards, I don't think they're playing the Lava Man, and we know they're playing Bump in the Night, so Nile Spellbomb stays, Lily the Last Hope goes, there's our 60, let's run it back. Alright everybody, game 2 against Mardu Burn, and our hand is unusual. Seeing triple Fulminator Mage is very unusual. I don't know how good that's actually going to be here on the draw, but I think our hand is functional enough that we should keep it. The lands are totally painless. We've got turn 1 Fatal Push, we've got Lily of the Veil, and we could just Fulminator them out of this game. That could happen. I would be happier with this hand on the play than the draw for sure, but we're going to keep it. Our opponent's keeping 7. Start us off, big guy. They got Monastery Swiftspear hitting us for 1, then they pass. Alright, Trophy. Yeah, might be okay. We'll see what happens. So they're coming across with Swifty. We'll see if they want to cast any spells first. They don't, so we'll push her. And the opponent's going to pass. So obviously they could have just burn spells, whatever, but no Eidolon, nothing like that. Makes me wonder if they're holding up a Searing Blaze. So that will inform my decision if I draw a creature here for turn 2, but I don't. I just draw an Overgrown Tomb, so in my opinion, it's better to deploy the Tomb tapped. Just make sure we can cast our Liliana, or indeed our Fulminator, I guess, painlessly next turn. End step, opponent's got Foundry and Skullcrack, sure. They've got the Blood Crypt, so Mardu lands are online, they shock it in, they Bump in the Night us, light up the stage, revealing Lava Spike and Bloodstain Mire. Pretty nice little spot for them. Lava Spike puts us down to 10, and then they'll pass. Okay, we draw Blooming Marsh. It is clearly Liliana of the Veil time. We'll pitch our Swamp. We'll just keep all the gas in hand that we can. And so we see them pitch a Path to Exile. That's potentially decent for us if we find like a Scavenging Ooze or something, but I'm disappointed that I was not able to get Burn out of their hand. So they just lose a path. They play the Bloodstained Mire. They found off Light Up the Stage. 2 cards still in hand. We draw Inquisition. Alright. Good card in the matchup, but not really good here. They almost certainly have a combination of lands and instants in their hand. So either way, casting an Inquisition is probably going to be fruitless. So I'm going to begin by ticking up the Liliana, see what they do. If they empty their hand, I'll pitch my Inquisition. If not, we'll see, but they're going to Skullcrack us in response. And they're going to Skullcrack us again in response. So they had all the burn. Feels bad, man. We're down to 4. Not in a very good position, but it is Fulminator Mage time. And here, because we cannot really take them off of anything quite yet, I'm going to pass. And this is also good if they rip a haste threat off the top. We can play defense against that, right? So, opponent is just going to skewer the critics hardcast. Well, we're down to 1. Looking pretty bad for us. Liliana of the Veil is our draw. Okay, so we tick up. We could pitch our trophy, we could pitch our Lily, but I think keeping the other Lily around is okay. So here's what I did. I chose to pitch the trophy. I chose to get in for 2 with my Grey Ogre, and then I played another Grey Ogre, Fulminator Mage. And here's what we're going to do, guys. We have to go for the high upside here because we're so far behind. I use them both. I use them both up. We Stone Rain the Blood Crypt, we Stone Rain the Foundry. Now if they draw any splash cards, they can't cast them. So, gives us probably, I think, the best chance here. And Liliana of the Veil, yet again, is our draw. So, I could have ulted here. I could have ulted and just ulted her to destroy a land, basically. But I don't think that's correct. They must, in my opinion, have a card they can't cast in hand, so I think we have to get that out of their hand before they rip a fetch land off the top, right? So we tick up our Lily, we pitch one of our other Lilies, and yeah, it's a Boros Charm, so that's a good start. Our plan is working so far. We play our other Fulminator Mage, and the opponent just has a Shard Volley, so we are just dead. But I think we took the correct lines there. I think there was a world in which we could have gotten there, but they just had a little bit too much burn too soon for us, especially us being on the draw. We lacked a card to kind of bridge the gap to stabilize us a little bit between when we started going on the Lily and Fulminator plan and the early game. So if we had like a Collective Brutality or a Kitchen Finks in there, something along those lines, or maybe even a Tarmogoyf to clock them, could have got there based on everything else, but we did not, and they burned us out. So unfortunate, but let's head over to Game 3. All right, my friends, Game 3 against Mardu Burn on the play, and our hand is pretty solid. It's imperfect because we have a fetch land, so we might be taking at least 1 damage, and we have Tireless Tracker, who is not the most impressive of all the threats we could find, one of the least impressive, but in very functional hand, Inquisition, Push, Brutality. This is a keeper, for sure. Opponent's keeping 7. Blooming Marsh, Inquisition U. We see 3 lands, 2 fetches and a Cliffs, and we see Goblin Guide double Light Up the Stage and Lightning Bolt. So Light Up the Stage is a card that is very good against us because it's a 2-for-1. However, I think that if we see situations like this where they might not reasonably be able to enable the Spectacle, we should try to leave them in hand and cripple their ways to get Spectacle. So with that in mind, the correct take is Lightning Bolt. Partially because that's like the one they can just sandbag and make sure they get the Spectacle when they need it, and partially because the Goblin Guide can be answered by both Push and Collective Brutality. So that's what I chose to take. Like, if they had maybe another Bolt and a Light Up the Stage, maybe we take something different there. But that was my read on the hand, and we'll see what happens. So it is, no surprise, Cliffs into Guide. Revealing a Verdant Catacombs for us. Thank you, Goblin Guide. Very generous of you, my friend. And Field of Ruin. Scavenging Ooze was our draw for turn. That's another good one. That one is good enough that I'm very happy to fully escalate my Brutality. We're pitching one of our lands, and we're pitching the Tracker. And it's going to be a fully escalated, kill your Goblin Guide, drain you for 2, and take away a Light Up the Stage. We see they found an Eidolon since we last saw their hand. So, alright. You got it. Pass to you. And, yep, they will fetch, they will play the Eidolon, they will pass. Overgrown Tomb. Okay. I think the play here is just to deploy that, tapped, and pass. see if we can get a little bit of value out of their Eidolon, like if they drew a Monastery Swift Spear or another haste threat, maybe they'll tax themselves a little bit before they move to combat. But they don't, they go to combat, so we will just push the Eidolon. It taxes us, we take 2. What else do they have? They've got that light up the stage. So that was actually, didn't even notice it at the time. That was a misplay. I should have pushed the Eidolon on my turn, because of course the Eidolon trigger is damage, and damage is what enables the spectacle of light up the stage. So, bit of a missed trick there. These newer cards, I've seen, I've kind of instinctively played against them kind of the old-fashioned way. A time or two. You might have seen me fail to play around Tithe Taker in a very minor way against Mardu aristocrats in my previous league. These are things that will just come with time and experience, but hey, hopefully you can learn from me here. And remember to push the Eidolon main phase. Don't get too cute with it if you know they have a light up the stage in hand. So they get a lava spike off that light up the stage. They get to spike us. They get to skewer us. All right, pretty good turn for them. Pretty good turn for them. However, they are shields down, so we get to go fetch a forest, deploy our Skoos, and cleanly gobble up 2 creatures getting up out of the range of Bolt and Searing Blaze and all the other bad stuff we don't like to see. They play an Arid Mesa, and they will hardcast a Skewer, putting us to 10. Alright, Blooming Marsh, not the most exciting draw I've ever had, but we will gobble up our Tireless Tracker and come across with our 5/5 Skoos. Opponent's got to fetch Sacred Foundry. I was a little bit afraid of Path to Exile there, but they don't have it. And here, I'm just going to take them off of white right now before they get to untap. Before they get to untap and maybe draw a path, I think it's correct to take them off of white. And I think it's also correct to grab a swamp there, even though we normally want forests for Skoos. I think we have enough. There's not even any creatures to eat anymore yet, at the moment anyway, so we want to hold up Fatal Push in case of a haste threat off the top. But they don't have a haste threat, they have a Bump in the Night and a tapped Blood Crypt. Alright. Worth noting, they are on 5 mana, so if they top deck a land, they can flash back this Bump in the Night. Definitely something you have to be vigilant for. So we draw Fulminator Mage, okay? Our draws haven't been that great besides the Skoos, but they might be sufficient. So here, we will play the Fulminator, we will just finally run out that land, and come across for 5. They're down to 6, they're facing lethal. And we also, if I didn't say so, and you didn't notice, we ate the Bump in the Night with the Skoos as well. I don't remember if I said that, but opponent will pass. Alright. Assassin's Trophy is our draw. Sure. Again, not the best here, but let's just swing and see if we have lethal. They're going to bolt our Fulminator Mage. Alright, so just for value in response, we're going to destroy the Blood Crypt. But more importantly, before damage, we get to just gobble up that Fulminator, become a 6/6 Skoos, turn it sideways for exactly lethal. And we were stabilized at a nice, healthy life total of 9. So definitely an interesting game, one where our opening hand was strong, and strong enough to put us ahead. But had we failed to find some decent follow-ups, it was a game we still reasonably could have lost. Now, our draws off the top were not that great overall. It was a lot of really medium or poor stuff. The lone exception was Scavenging Ooze, and if you guys have played this deck enough, or if you've even seen me play this deck enough, you know that Scavenging Ooze can really just take over the game like nothing else against a burn deck. If you've navigated to a position where both players are top decking, and you're able to cleanly grow the Ooze to at least a 4/4 before, while they're tapped out or something like that, or while you know they don't have burn in hand, yeah, the Skoos is going to be a tough nut for them to crack, and we saw that here. So I continue to kind of play with fire with my deck building choices without really having, I've kind of gone down on my anti-burn cards and I did that right before Burn took off in the meta, and I haven't really, revised that since, because I just keep beating Burn. Like, it's often close. It's usually 2-1, and maybe I should just be playing a third Collective Brutality in my 75 to really put the lockdown on this matchup. But you know what? I keep playing with fire. I'm not punished for it yet. We take down Burn yet again. So I really do think the matchup is a very firm favorite for us. I always like to see it across the table from me. And we advance to 3-0 in this competitive league. Good times, my friends. I hope you're enjoying this, and I will see you for round 4. All right, my friends, here we go. Round 4 hype. Round 4 hype, and we're on the play. The hand is very powerful in some ways, especially for the play. Turn 1 Inquisition, turn 2 Bob. Nice low curve all around. The hand functions. It's a little clunky in other ways, because in my opinion, if you've got, if it's a 2-lander and one of your lands is Field of Ruin, you've pretty much got a Fetch Shock in a blind game 1, if you have a turn 1 play to make. So between the Fetch Shock and the Bobs, this could get painful as well. We also cannot quite cast our interaction beyond Inquisition until we find a third land. So definitely a hand that seems really powerful in some ways and really clunky in others, but it is a certain keep, if you ask me. And our opponent will have to take a mull. They're going to go to 6. All right. Here we go, here we go. Overgrown Tomb, Inquisition U. And we see that it is a mirror, and from my memory, opponent scryed to the bottom, so I can only imagine that they scryed another land to the bottom. So, looks like a mirror match to me. Forest, Field of Ruin, Swamp, Verdant Catacombs, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize. Well, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, both kind of doing similar things here. Fatal Push lets them play a little bit more reactively, so I just went ahead and took it. This forces them to just kind of spend their first turn Thoughtseizing. It does give away hand information, though. That's the downside, but either way, I expected a Bob to bite the dust, whether we let them keep push or Thoughtseize, and sure enough, they take Bob with a Thoughtseize. So, Liliana, the Last Hope, wonderful card in the matchup, but now I'm a little bit nervous about a kill spell here, in that I won't hit my third land. That's the big risk here. Alright, they go Forest into Tarmogoyf, so good for them for finding some gas, but boy am I happy that Bob lives. We untap with the Bob, and he finds us 2 lands. Alright, good job, Bob. So, Liliana of the Veil would be an absolute backbreaker here, but instead it's just going to be Abrupt Decay, clear the way, get in for 2. Looking good. Looking good so far, but this is a mirror. We know they're going to grind, and we know they're going to have answers. They do find an answer in the form of Assassin's Trophy. At least we get to ramp off of it. That's pretty cool. And they will play their Verdant Catacombs and pass. So, Blooming Marsh is not an exciting draw for turn, but we get to play the Liliana the Last Hope, roll her down, and find another couple choices. We've got 3 Confidants in the yard now, plus a Goyf, but I'd rather have a Bob than a Goyf here. I want to keep pulling ahead on resources, and it's not like it's the type of matchup where Tarmogoyf is a guaranteed awesome clock, because of course they can just find a Tarmogoyf of their own, and then it's a staring contest. I guess Liliana the Last Hope breaks that mirror to an extent as well, but, these are all things to think about, and I just chose the one that gives me the resources. Doesn't matter, because they had another trophy anyway. And then they've got a Scooz. Okay. They're putting some pretty decent stuff together, but fortunately we draw Fatal Push for turn. We had a trophy as well, but Fatal Push is more efficient. We're going to use that. Take the Lily up, and we'll pass, holding up trophy, sandbagging our Blooming Marsh. They take a draw, they pass. Well, we draw land for turn, and I think we are supposed to have an eye toward the long game here and take Liliana the Last Hope up one more time. It's guaranteed value to buy back something now. However, I think if they had a trophy, a decay, or a pulse, they would obviously have just played it last turn. So we are risking them finding that off of this upcoming draw step. But if they don't, then our line is rewarded by getting to buy something back and then keeping her around even longer to do it again and again. That's the idea in these grindy matchups. You take her up, you take her down. Repeat ad infinitum. Liliana the Veil. Okay, that's a pretty good draw for them. They play a land first, so their hand is empty. Discard effect will be asymmetrical. However, we've got the trophy for her. So trophy her away. Picture Blooming Marsh, hang on to our Verdant Catacombs. And we'll untap, we draw a Hissing Quagmire. So we are not drawing much, but that's okay, because our Liliana rolls down, mills over a Tireless Tracker. We go Tracker into Verdant Catacombs and immediately make 2 clues. Not many better feelings in a BG mirror, I'll tell you that much. And I'm just going to get super aggressive with the clues, and I'm going to field them to make a 3rd clue. And our opponent just scoops to that. There's no way on an empty hand they're beating Lily the Last Hope, double clues, and Tireless Tracker, plus a card in hand. There's no way. So, unfortunate here for our opponent that they had to mull. They mulled to a hand that was light on action, and that we had discard into Bob, and then Liliana the Last Hope into Tracker as the 2 major value pieces. We were able to keep up with the threats they found. The rest is history. Pretty comprehensive win here, and not much our opponent could have done differently. So, BG Civil War, Brothers Wars. It's makes me a little bit sad inside, but we've got to win these games just like we've got to win anything else. So let's take a quick look at the sideboard, see how we're going to do that. Alright, my friends, you know my opinions on this by now. It's an opinion shared by lots of other good players of this archetype. Discard is not where you want to be in the BGX mirrors. So I personally take out all of it. I take out all of it, and that's partially because I have enough cards to bring in. But if you don't, don't bring in terrible cards, I guess, just because you really want to get your discard out of the deck. It is reasonable to leave a copy or 2 in if you have to. But if you've got the luxury to take them out, I would take them out. So we're looking to probably cut all 7 of these and a land. We want to cut a land in the mid-range mirrors against Jund and Abzan. Maybe just Jund, because Abzan plays Path to Exile potentially. But against Jund, you can cut a basic forest. But in the BG mirror, with Fields of Ruin flying around on both sides and lots of Assassin's trophies, we cut a Blooming Marsh. So what does it look like if we bring these 8 cards out? Well, Nissa Vital Force is an absolute house. Engineered Explosives is great. Fulminators are something I'm going to put in the maybe board category along with Nile Spellbomb. These are cards that are playable, but not necessarily slam dunks. Kitchen Finks, Maelstrom Pulse, slam dunk. Lily the Last Hope, slam dunk. Deathmark is good. Deathmark is good. It misses Bob, but otherwise it's going to hit pretty much everything I expect to see as far as creatures go. So that leaves us with 2 slots and 6 maybe board cards if we add Languish to it. This is why the discard comes out, guys. We've got so much to do in these mid-range mirrors, and it's not like we're just loading down our sideboard to fight mid-range. Like, all of this stuff is really there for other matchups, but just the way our deck operates, we can leverage a lot of it really well in BGX Civil Wars, right? So what do we do with our final 6, or with our final 2 slots out of these 6? So Languish is a card that I'm pretty comfortable saying now we don't need it. Like, one of the main reasons we play it is because a lot of our stuff survives it. So by definition, it's a mirror match. A lot of their stuff is going to survive it too. Worth considering, and there are windows where it'd still be very good, but I don't think we want it. Normally, I like all 3 Fulminator Mage against the 3-color BGX decks, but it's actually not that backbreaking against green-black simply because our mana base is less greedy and less clunky, right? It's still a good play. It's still a good, gray ogre that becomes land destruction. All that's true. But I don't think we need to force all 3 in here. and I think exactly one Nile Spellbomb is still pretty good. So my preferred configuration of those maybe board cards is to do this. Is to put in 2 Fulminator Mage, leave the third one on the bench, and pretty much looking something like this. Now, we are on the draw, so maybe you could also say Liliana of the Veil gets a tad worse on the draw. If you wanted to bring in the third Fulminator or something a little bit more reactive, maybe you could do that. But I believe for this particular matchup, I just submitted it like this, and I think this is very, very good set up against a mid-range mirror, so let's see how it works out for us. Alright, here we are on the draw in the BG Rock mirror. Our opponent has kept 7, and we are faced with the kind of a similar prospect of a powerful but somewhat clunky hand. And on top of that, of course, we don't have the turn 1 discard like we had last game because we've sided it all out. So this hand is a certain keep, in my opinion. You don't want them all in this matchup if you can at all help it. It functions. It's great. But, no Fatal Push, no Abrupt Decay. I've seen better. However, this hand has got just a very high density of power. Very, very powerful hand. So, opponent goes Blooming Marsh Pass. We still need that third land, though. We still need that third land pretty badly. Swamp Pass with another Lily. And we've drawn the third land. That's a beautiful thing. So, our opponent kept a one-lander. They kept a one-lander, so they just... I kind of skipped over this part. My bad. Should have mentioned this before we went to our turn. Our opponent just passed. They didn't do anything. They just passed. So, risky. I don't recommend keeping one-landers with this deck unless it is a post-sideboard game and you're against a deck where you need to find your hate cards to win, like if it's Dredge or it's Bridgevine. Yes, you can keep a one-lander if you're loaded down with Grafdigger's Cages and Surgical Extractions and Nile Spellbombs. Yes, keep that one-lander. Or even maybe if it's like, you've got like a Cage and a Scooz and it's a one-lander. Yeah, maybe you keep it and hope to draw lands. Maybe that's better than taking them all to 6. But I think you've got them all the one-lander in the mid-range mirror. I really do. Then again, like I just got done saying, mulliganing in the mid-range mirror isn't good either. So it's kind of a no-win situation, obviously, to just draw a one-land 7. But I think our friend here was supposed to mull it. That said, they've clearly got a lot of gas in hand, so we'll see. And indeed, they have a push for Scooz. I kind of expected that. I figured if they kept a one-lander, and they didn't have discard, they probably have Fatal Push. So that's actually why I played the Scooz there over the Goyf. I rate the Goyf more highly in this particular situation because we have so much gas in hand that we're never really going to activate the Scooz anytime soon. Plus, we only have 1 green mana, right? So Scooz was the push bait there. And the opponent draws and still doesn't have a land. So now, pretty hard to see myself losing from this particular spot. We're going to go on the Liliana plan. And we're going to take up and pitch the Swamp. Obviously, there's some consideration to keeping the Swamp so that we can just go, next turn we go Swamp. We have a double spell turn. We empty our hand as quickly as possible, make Liliana asymmetrical as quickly as possible. On the other hand, we could just keep casting gas. We could just keep all this gas in hand. Either way, seems good to me. I chose to ditch the land. We'll see how it goes. Okay, the opponent has finally hit land drop number 2, and they do have an answer to Lily, but it's one that ramps us, rewards us for our decision to pitch the land last turn. So, trophy, takes care of Lily, we go get a forest, and we find Treetop Village. Alright, so we have a couple options here. We could play Goyf, we could hold up Trophy. I don't like that, actually, because if they have like a Lily in hand and they go Goyf, or they draw land for turn, they go land in the Lily, yeah, we lose our Goyf. Holding up Trophy is not exactly the most appealing either, because I don't want to give them a third land if they don't naturally get one. Finally, Goyf starting the clock is fine, but I think I would rather just continue running them out of resources and really punish them for having all of this gas in hand. So to that end, I actually choose to pitch my Trophy, trusting that between Treetop Village to pressure Planeswalkers and Lily Edict to take care of creatures, I can handle whatever they're going to find. So I pitch my trophy, they pitch a push. I'll play the Treetop, and I've also this way set myself up for being able to play both Goyf and Kitchen Finks next turn. So if I draw a land or whatever, I can totally empty my hand. I draw a Scooz, whatever, I'll pitch it. Take the Lily up, pitch it. Opponent loses a Finks of their own. That's great for me. So I'll play my Finks. I'll play my Goyf. And the opponent's still got 5 cards in hand when they take their next draw step, but then they pass. Still only on 2 lands. Fatal Push is my draw for turn. Not a very good one. But admittedly, just this board state is pretty fine. So we'll fire up the Treetop Village. We're going to turn them all sideways. The opponent had to pitch a Tireless Tracker there. We're getting all kinds of gas out of their hand. And they do have a push, so sure, there goes our Tarmogoyf. But we still hit for 6 with Finks and the Apes. Opponent pass to the opponent. They take their draw step, and they have to scoop it up. Presumably still stuck on 2 land, without an Abrupt Decay or an Assassin's Trophy for the Liliana, and just getting pressured by the Village, by the Finks. They might have had some big clunky bombs in hand. Maybe more Trackers, maybe Kalidas, maybe Nissa, who knows. Maybe Planeswalkers, maybe Maelstrom Pulse. They could have had all kinds of power in hand. They just could not unleash it when they're only on 2 lands. Very unfortunate at the end of the day for our opponent. They did nothing wrong in game 1. They had to take them all. They kept action light 6, rightfully so, and they got punished pretty hard for it based on what matchup they were against and how I drew and how I curved out. Here in game 2, I remain of the opinion that they should have mulliganed the 1-lander. I don't think you can keep a 1-lander in the mid-range mirror, and this is just the perfect example as to why. It's just the perfect example as to why cards like Liliana of the Veil punish that so hard. That said, even if we accept that, our opponent was still objectively and mathematically unlucky to only hit their second land drop by turn 7. So they had 6 draw steps. Wasn't very good odds for them to miss their land drop for that long, and then to miss their third land drop for up until they scooped. So we have to acknowledge the role that luck played here. The luck was definitely on our side. So always bittersweet to take down the mirror match, because we love to see our fellow rockers doing well. So good job there, Rapid Louise. I'm sorry about the bad luck, the Mauls and the land screw. It happens, but good games, well played. Keep on jamming the grind, man. Keep on playing the Golgari, and that hopefully that won't happen to you in the near future again. So that said, I'm always happy to win the mirror at the same time. Like I said, bittersweet, maybe emphasis on the sweet, because it feels bad to be kind of a one-trick pony, kind of a specialist in an archetype, and then lose the mirror. But, that's going to happen sooner or later on this channel. These do come down to top decks a lot. But for now, we continue taking down the mirror. So feels great. And we advance after a comprehensive victory over the mirror match to 4-0 in the league. So really exciting, guys. We're playing for the 5-0. Let's see what happens. All right, my friends, here we are on the play. Round 5, looking for the elusive competitive league 5-0. And our hand is pretty great, except it kind of has a parallel to our game 1 hand from last round, where we've basically got no choice but to fetch and shock on turn 1. And then on top of that, it's a Thoughtseize instead of an Inquisition. So we are definitely a little leery about our life total as things stand, but it's a very strong hand, especially on the play. Certainly a keep, but we have to, we're probably, for once, not hoping it's burn, based on our opener, but let's find out. Overgrown Tomb, Thoughtseize, can't play scared, we just do it. And we see a pile of Sultai cards. Basically, we see a one-lander that's Overgrown Tomb, double Ether Vial, but Assassin's Trophy in an Ether Vial deck, and then we see Skooz, Tarmogoyf, and Vendilion Click. Like I said, just a pile of like Sultai Mythic rares, basically. Seems pretty good, and I guess regular rares too. Seems pretty good, seems like a deck that's really designed to grind. So we might be in for a tough one, but big question is, what do we do here? So if they only had one Ether Vial would be the clear choice. We take the Vial, and they are hopefully crippled for at least a little while, or at least they have to play one at a time. I don't think we should take a Vial since they have two, though. I really don't. Even though two Vials on field is kind of a problem in a different way, I don't think taking a Vial there is correct. I think we'd rather start eating away at their actual threats. So they've got a Skooz, they've got a Goyf, and then there's the trophy as well to consider, right? Vendilion Click, not a card I care all that much about at the moment, so deliberated for a little while. In the end, I just chose to take the Goyf. The Skooz is not an issue as long as they're light on lands. It's not going to do much, and hopefully we can just kind of run them over with resource advantage from Bob and with our Tarmogoyf outsizing theirs. Luxury of being on the play. So, Tomb into Vial, as expected, passes it back to us. Okay, we draw an Abrupt Decay. That potentially lines up well against the Ether Vials, but we couldn't cast it anyway, and it's certainly I'd be interested in just slamming that Bob anyway, because I don't think they're going to have a 1-drop to Vial out. So they've played their other Ether Vial, and they pass, so they're still on one land, 2 unknowns in hand. Bobby flips a Scavenging Ooze, and we draw a Forest for turn. Well, I think my plans have changed based on the fact that they haven't yet hit a second land drop, and the fact that I found an Abrupt Decay. I'm pretty happy to go ahead and decay that Vial. Now, in this regard, I am a little sad I didn't take one Vial with my Thoughtseize, because then they would be totally shut out right now, just really hoping to top deck a land. However, I think that was a correct play at the time, and I think this is the correct play now. We want to be able to crash in here with the Bob, continue pulling ahead on board. If the game goes really, really long, they look like they have a lot of grinding power. We want to prevent them from tempoing us out of the game in the coming few turns. Alright, they found a land, but they're just going to pass. Interesting, so no 2-drop creature. Vial on 1, Polluted Delta is what's held up. So I think what we do here is attack with the Bob, see what they've got for us. They don't have anything for us. Alright, they'll take 2. So here, could go a couple different ways. Could obviously go Tracker into Hissing Quagmire, that's totally legit, but I chose to just go a little bit wider. So we're going to play a Skooz, we're going to play a Goyf, and we're going to try to make sure we end the game, again, as quickly as possible before they can really start leveraging this Vial. Instead, they have to Fetch and Shock to do this, but they'll get to trophy away a creature, and they choose Skooz over Goyf. Interesting. Makes me wonder if they have another Goyf of their own. Regardless, there goes our Skooz. We go get a land. Opponent's going to take that Vial up to 2. Let's see what they can do here. No third land, and they'll just pass it. Alright, we continue to get our Bob value, and Bob finds us Fatal Push. We've also got Kalitas. So Kalitas, potentially very good actually in this matchup, but with only 2 black sources right now, tapping out for the Kalitas, I don't know how much I like that, especially because we cannot Fatal Push this turn if we do so. So, as much as it might make sense in some ways to do that, then we would only be attacking with Goyf, because we know about their Skooz. They could Vial in the Skooz, they could eat a couple things with the Goyf. Doesn't seem correct to play the Kalitas. I think we just hold up all of our interaction here. So they're going to Vial in Snapcaster Mage. Wow. Okay, there's some value for you. There's some real value for you. I do still kind of feel obligated to push here, because I don't want him trading with my Bob. I want to keep pulling ahead with the Bob, keep clocking them, and as expected, they're going to trophy away the Goyf here. So, yep. Snapcaster Mage was quite nice in that spot for them, but I'm fine spending a Fatal Push on that 2-1 body because we've gotten so many free cards off of the Bob. And now it is Tireless Tracker time. We get to play Tireless Tracker, we get to make a clue. We're holding up clue or trophy. So, pretty good follow-up to all that. Really making good use out of the couple basic lands untapped they've given us with those Assassin's Trophies. And the opponent leaves their Violet too, so there's going to be no Vendilion Click. And they will pass, still only on 2 lands, so end step, cracking a clue here. Maelstrom Pulse, good draw. Bob flips a Goyf, and we have a Fatal Push as our draw step, so we've got all kinds of great stuff in hand now. And now that I have another Fatal Push and a couple more black lands, it is definitely time to tap out for Kalitas. Because now we're going to get to send our stuff in. They can't just take the damage, I don't think. And if they don't, well, whether they're chump blocking or whether we're pushing and trophying, we're going to get all the Kalitas value we could ever ask for. So, main phase of the Kalitas. Turn our card advantage engine sideways. At Ether Vial activation during Declare Attackers for the Skoos, sure enough, we'll just Fatal Push it. They're tapping out. It's a trophy on Kalitas in response. Alright, that's a decent answer. And we'll go get a Forest. Then our Fatal Push will resolve. And we get to crack in for 6. We made another clue on top of all that. And now we could do a couple different things, but what I really like doing is just pulsing away that Ether Vial while they're all tapped out. Now I don't think they can have anything here with, even if they draw a 3rd land, what are they going to have that stops our board in our hand? Nothing. So they take their draw, but then they go ahead and scoop it right up. So, interesting game. That Abrupt Decay was clutch if they were operating on double Ether Vial for that whole game. Now, that might have been very, very different, but things worked out like, the Thoughtseize, I said we won't take the Vial, and then the Decay ended up hitting the Vial. Again, I think both decisions were correct at the time with the information we had access to, and even taking away that Tarmogoyf, even though it kind of proved a little bit suboptimal to only take 1 Vial instead of both, taking away the Tarmogoyf was actually huge. Because when did they find that second land? Was it turn 3? It wasn't that late. We were able to continue getting in with Bob to get in with this tracker. None of that would have been true if they'd just had a Tarmogoyf down that we couldn't answer. And of course we had answers, but then they might have had other things stick, So it all worked out okay, even though it was a little bit unconventional in some ways. And of course the deck we're facing is a little bit unconventional. We're talking about an Ether Vial deck with trophies and Snapcasters and Vendilion Clicks, and then lots of green-black creatures as well. So definitely an interesting one, but I guess we go over to the sideboard and prepare to grind. Alright, so against the Sultai grindy pile, what do we want? Well, I'm going to treat it kind of like a mid-range mirror to a large degree. I think I'm a little bit more interested in Nile Spellbomb than I might otherwise be because it is a Snapcaster Mage deck. That is clear. So 2 Spellbomb might kind of be the sweet spot there. In terms of not being too all-in on that, but having a good grindy value card that can blow out the snaps. What else did we like here? Engineered Explosives, for sure. Hitting all the 2-drops, hitting the Vials is great. Kitchen Finks, Maelstrom Pulse, Lily the Last Hope, these are all still very good. Nissa Vital Force and Deathmark are both good in most mid-range mirrors. Here, I consider them a little bit more of a maybe board card because there's just more going on. There's just different things going on. They're on blue and they're on Snapcaster, so Nissa could be a little clunky if they play any kind of permission. Nissa could be clunky. She could get stripped by Vendilion Click. It's just not as much of a slam dunk here, in my opinion, as it is in most mid-range mirrors, even though this is basically a mid-range mirror in a lot of ways. And Deathmark's the same way, they play their blue creatures. It's not it's not necessarily as much of a sure thing. But we still probably want one, if not both of these cards. And then we are, as always, considering Fulminator Mage in these grinding matches. So, Languish is a maybe board card here as well. Definitely seems okay to me. You know, the additional creatures that blue brings to the table, they all die to Languish. Snapcaster, Vendilion Click, they're all going to die to Languish. So, it's really, really interesting sideboarding decisions here. I think these 5 are my first picks, and then we'll take it from there. So, Liliana of the Veil is good in mid-range mirrors, but they can probably play around her reasonably well with Snapcaster Mages and with Ether Vials and stuff. So I sided out one, and I think I would consider siding out another in a matchup like this. So let's do it like that for now. And I'm pretty happy to cut away most discard because we have a lot of things to do, if not all discard. The reason I would leave some in is because they probably have a good amount of 2-for-1s with maybe Planeswalkers, Snapcaster Mages, and so on and so forth. So I'll cut the Thoughtseizes. They didn't show me anything that screams 4-drop, you know, so I'll just preserve my life total. Cut 1 Inquisition, and then consider cutting the other 2 as well. Anything else we don't like? I mean, Collective Brutality we could maybe consider cutting here. For the same reason we would cut it in mid-range mirrors in general. And we are against a 3-color mid-range deck, so I'm going to cut a land, and it's going to be... it's actually not going to be a basic because they play Assassin's Trophy. So we'll cut a Blooming Marsh. What else do we not like? I think we like everything else. I think we want to keep all of our trackers, all of our catch-all removal, Goyf, Skoos, Bob, these are all great, right? So let's begin by siding out these 6. That puts us at 59. So from here, I think Deathmark is good enough to just come in. That can make a nice even 60. And then what do we do from there? So Languish, Nissa, Vital Force, Fulminator, Mages. 5 potential cards to come in, 4 potential cards to come out. Well, I think any permutation of involving those cards is pretty fair overall. And I believe what I did here, don't quote me on this, but I believe from memory what I did is I omitted the Languish because just like they can kind of play around the Liliana of the Veil with Ether Vial, with Vendilion Click, with Snapcaster Mage, all the stuff at instant speed, that also applies to Languish. So in the end, I cut the Languish and I just said, you know what, this is a grind fest. We're bringing in the Fulminators and the 3-color deck. We're bringing in the Nissa. She's a game winner. And I'm just cutting away the discard. I'll cut away the second Liliana of the Veil. We'll just go full loaded for bear, ready to take down a mid-range mirror. And then we'll perhaps reevaluate after we see their deck for Game 2. So let's see their deck for Game 2. Alright, my friends, here we are. One more win. One more game win, and we've got the 5-0. And our opponent's on the play. They're keeping 7. We have a slow hand, especially considering we're on the draw, but it's very powerful. It's very functional, very powerful. So this is a keep. This is a keep for sure. And we'll have to hope they don't just run us over, but they don't seem like the type of deck that does that. And it's forced into Ether Vial, so they kept the Vials in. I wasn't sure about that, but I'm going to play a Marsh Flats here after having drawn land number 4. I just am going to probably grab an Overgrown Tomb on the end step here. They shock in a Watery Grave and they play Serum Visions. I definitely didn't expect Serum Visions out of a deck like this, I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that for sure. Very spicy. But Serum Visions, do we have the game log? We don't have the game log. I believe it was top if I recall correctly. So top is never what we want to see, but it is what it is. So sure enough, end step, we'll grab our Tomb, and we'll draw another Swamp. Well, all these basics, not very good draws at all. Not very good draws at all, but Dark Confidant is our play. He's our guy, and maybe he'll stick. Who knows? They untap, Vial goes to 2. Alright, they've got a Misty Rainforest, but then they just pass, so no removal for Bob. Untapping with Bob even once in a mid-range mirror like this is sweet. However, he immediately reminds us that greatness does come at a cost by flipping the 4-drop, flipping the Kalitas. All right, Bob, yes, you got us. You got us good. Kalitas, still a great card in the matchup, but obviously flipping the Swamp and drawing the Kalitas rather than the reverse would have been nice. We try a Liliana of the Veil. Again, we're a little worried about permission, perhaps, but there's nothing really else for us to do, and we've got another one in hand. So with all these lands, I think it's correct to just jam her, and she resolves, so that's amazing. That's huge for us. Very, very big. We're going to pitch a Swamp when we tick her up. They'll pitch an Opt. All right, sure. They'll pitch an Opt. Going to hold back the Bob because there's plenty of things they could vial in, or indeed even maybe flash in, that can trade with the Bob or just cut them down. And we also might just want to block with Bob for our Liliana. We will have to see. There's one of them. There's a Tarmogoyf. So they vial in the Goyf. They take the vial up to 3. And this was another one of those situations like we had earlier in the league where the opponent tapping on tapping, tapping on tapping, not sure what they're going to do. In the end, they just attack with the Goyf. So here, I could go either way with this. I thought about it. In the end, I said, I'm going to preserve our Liliana because next turn we can go Kalitas, Edict, and start taking over the game with Kalitas plus Liliana. So sure, I'm going to block with the Bob and call it good. So the opponent's got an Assassin's Trophy for Lily, so our plans kind of fall to ruin there. We're already down to 1 basic in the deck. That's very annoying because we've just naturally drawn all these basics, but Scavenging Ooze is our play for turn, as our draw for turn. That's actually a fine one because it lets us have a 2-spell turn here. So we'll redeploy another Liliana. We don't get the Kalitas value here because, of course, we can't cast both, but Lily into Scooze is a pretty darn good looking turn. But the opponent's going to fetch, shock, and spell snare in response. Talk about being worried about permission. They've got a spell snare. That's awful. That is awful for us. So we get blown out by the spell snare. And then they vial in an Eternal Witness. The value is unreal, buying back a Tarmogoyf. So now, I didn't see these game 1, but now I recognize this deck as Sultai Eternal Command, or something similar. The idea is it's super grindy, interactive, plays a little permission, some removal, lots of good creatures, and Ether Vial to get to become really mana efficient as you cycle through Eternal Witnesses to buy things back. The command part of the deck is because it's also known to play Cryptic Command. Eternal Witness, Violin, buy back a Cryptic Command, that's just a lot of very, very high value, all things considered. So, yeah, Eternal Witness, good magic card. Vial on 3, they make a 4th land drop. If they are playing Cryptic Command, they're now on Cryptic Mana, and the Witness gets to finish off Lily, so that's pretty bad for us. Tireless Tracker is a good draw, though, and I think we need to try to resolve her here. Once again, putting off Kalitas, we gotta keep pace with their value. Again, we are ahead. We are ahead on resources. We are behind on board, though, with this Tarmogoyf coming back. But let's try to deal with it. So we'll pulse away the Tarmogoyf. I think that's correct here. Just staying ahead on board. However, we are max punished for it because on, I guess still on our main phase they're going to do it, doesn't matter. They're going to violin yet another Eternal Witness, buy back the Tarmogoyf. So it's going to hit the battlefield for the 3rd time. Very annoying. Also very annoying there because now they have 2/2/1s attacking, where if we had just passed and held up our clue, they couldn't attack with these witnesses at all. So we're kind of max punished for that decision. I don't think it was the wrong decision, but we got punished for it, that's for sure. So here comes that Tarmogoyf. And here comes another Tarmogoyf. Well, now I'm extremely punished because just holding on to that pulse one more turn. Oh well, what can you do? We draw Dark Confidant. Not the best, but Kalitas here is, at least enough to shut off some witness attacks, and then we're just going to pass bluffing interaction, holding up clue. These Goyfs are pretty large. The Goyfs are pretty large indeed. So the opponent turns everything sideways, and here I expected them to only attack with the Tarmogoyfs. It makes me wonder what they have in hand. So, in order to better inform my decision here, I'm just going to crack a clue just to see what my next draw is going to be. It's a land. Alright. Not very exciting, but that makes me definitely want to at least keep my tracker around, so I'm just going to assign those 2 blocks. I mean, who knows what they could have, but I'm going to take 10. I'm at 10, but I'm also going to gain 3. So if this all works as intended, I'm going to go to 3. I'm going to take care of both witnesses. Make a zombie. Make 2 zombies, rather. So, okay. It works. It works. So that was a fantastic block for us, considering all the bad things. Now they have a fatal push, so of course that turned on a revolt for them. So that might be one reason they made that attack. Now they get to push the Kalitas. Well, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Kalitas could have really stabilized us here. But he has at least done some work toward that end. So we're going to main phase a clue. We drew a land for turn, and we draw another land. Oof, the flood when we really need some action. We're going to play the Hissing Quagmire because we want to get that man land with Death Touch down. We're going to main phase another clue. Assassin's Trophy. Alright, that's a good draw. That's a good draw here. So we're going to turn the tracker sideways. Only the tracker. In theory, we could have attacked with a zombie as well, which would put them to 7, which would make them a little bit more likely to potentially die next turn. The problem with that is if they just draw like another Fatal Push or any other form of removal, we are just dead to the Goyf. So I think we have to hold back both zombies here. Also, if they draw Spell Snare, Snapcaster Mage, they've got a lot of live draws that can blow out our trophy here. So they're going to opt. And then they're going to attack. Here's our trophy. They do have Snapcaster. They found Snap with the opt, and they get to Spell Snare, so that's very bad for us. Now, it's worth noting one quick thing, though. If, then, you know, we've still got this huge tracker on board, things might still be okay, but it's worth noting one quick thing. If we had wanted to make sure our trophy resolved, we could and perhaps should have cast it in response to the opt. Here's the thing, though. If, like, I kind of want them to commit, I'm assuming they didn't draw Snapcaster. I'm assuming they drew something less good here than Snapcaster Mage, which provides the interaction and the body, right? But if they had drawn something less good, I kind of wanted them to attack here, so I could trophy one, chump the other, and then turn Tracker, Zombie, Quagmire sideways for the win. Or just Tracker cracking a clue plus a zombie, whatever. A couple different ways to get there. But, so that was a toss-up decision there. Do we make sure our trophy resolves in response to the opt, or do we kind of still hold on to the trophy, make them have something, try to bait the attack? So we tried to bait the attack, we got punished for it because they drew Snapcaster Mage, and here we've got no choice but to throw both zombies away. And that's that. So we draw yet another land for turn. That is horrendous. We will crack a clue, and we find Scooz. Okay, Scooz is a good one. Scooz is a good one for sure. So, playing the Scooz out. In here, we just kind of have to pass. Playing some defense. Right now, we're not dead to a Snapcaster Mage. So we're at 3. That only does 2. We've got to block both Goyfs, though. So we can hold up Quagmire. They've got a Scooz as well. We just let the Scooz resolve. We cannot afford to eat things in response like we might otherwise, because then we cannot activate and assign a block with Quagmire. So they attack with everything. Okay. Hissing Quagmire is the block here. In here, I don't have to do anything else. I know they don't have anything else in hand. I know the Snapcaster Mage just puts me to 1, doesn't really change anything. My Tracker gets to eat a Tarmogoyf, and my Quagmire gets to trade with a Tarmogoyf. And then the opponent just scoops. The opponent said in the chat, "Good game, well played, I punted this game." I don't know if I would agree that they punted this game, but a couple of, I guess the attacks are probably what our opponent here was referring to. They, These attacks were not necessarily easy to make, but the two attacks that were questionable were probably sending the Eternal Witnesses alongside the Tarmogoyfs in against my Kalitas, and now this attack here. I think, especially in this case, they might have been better off just passing. I'm not sure. It's hard to say, but definitely, maybe they just thought that they were far enough behind that they had to force us to see their correct blocks. I don't know. Either way, I agree, opponent. Good game, well played. And guess what, guys? We got there. We got the 5-0 yet again. I've been saying for a while on this channel, we've had several 3-2s lately with what seemed to be a healthy dose of relatively bad luck. Not to manifest a negativity bias or anything, but, trying to be objective. I think the luck has been a little bit against us in some of these 3-2s at least. But here, and then after some of those I've said, if we ever get a run of really good luck, I think we're going to get another 5-0. I think we're due for one. And this was it, guys. This was an easy 5-0. It was an easy 5-0. I'm sometimes playing for my life and clawing and scraping 3-2s. And, of course, the 5-0 that we debuted our live recorded comp leagues on this channel with, that was a really tough 5-0, from what I remember. This one was pretty easy. We had our opponents mulling a little bit more than usual. We had a free win round 1 against a tooth and nail deck that just couldn't really get going. We had some real advantage in the mirror match just based on how things panned out, the top decks in the opening hands and so on and so forth. We had, a pretty even, pretty skill testing match against Burn where both decks really did do what they are designed to do, but again, Burn is kind of a favorable matchup in my opinion. And we had we probably got the luckiest to escape with a win against Esper Spirits because, of course, in that crucial Game 3, they just drew all 4 Aether Vials over the course of the game. So that was definitely some decent luck for us. And then here, well, I think we piloted this one here pretty well. And, we stuck in the game against a lot of really good value, especially here in Game 2. And our opponent made some aggressive attacks, and we took full advantage. So definitely had the amount of luck necessary, the amount of luck requisite to achieve the 5-0. So we put up another 5-0, feels great, got all the prizes, got all the chests. You can't ask for more than the 5-0, and like I said, it was kind of an easy one. It was kind of an easy one compared to most leagues that I play. So we just had things line up really well for us. Lots of turn 2 Dark Confidants. Lots of gas in the mid to late game. Everything really showed up well here. We had some good displays from our Lilianas. We had some important displays from Tireless Tracker and Scavenging Ooze. Our spot removal was spot on. We kind of had a little bit of everything. This was a really good, holistic Golgari experience, and I had all kinds of fun playing it. I'm very happy with this result, and I hope all of you watching enjoyed this as well. So as always, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for supporting this content. Thank you to all of my patrons for doing so, and thanks again to Michael Brown, our newest Inquisitor. Welcome aboard once again, my friend. And for all those out there watching, if you are enjoying this content, if you would like to get access to my tier rewards, and if you would like to support what it is I'm doing here, Grimflayer MTG is on Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. I would also dearly appreciate anyone who's not subscribed to the channel. Just give me that sub, and that helps grow my channel too. That would be awesome. Feel free to let me know, as always, what you thought about the lines I took, what you thought about the sideboarding, general thoughts on any of these matchups. I, too, am always learning. That's what we have to do here when we're a student of the game, when we're playing an interactive deck. We've got to always be expanding our horizons. We've got to always be acquiring knowledge. So I learn from you guys just as much as you learn from me. So let me know what you saw here. Let me know what you're thinking. And I look forward to hearing feedback from all of you. Thanks again for watching. Stay tuned to the channel. You guys know it. I've got more content coming up as soon as I can make it happen. So Thanks again, and I will talk to you soon. I hope you have a great day.